Hello and salutations, it's me, Salty. Welcome back to Sensoys, and today I'm doing a bit of a customizing experiment. My friend has a son, and his birthday is next week, and I figured I'd make him a little something. This is a Tim-E, or Timmy, I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's written Tim-MEE. So this is a Timmy cave, and I had one of these when I was a kid. Same color, same sculpt, and you can get them in a variety. You can get them in like red, yellow, like whatever you want. Yeah, this is not from the 80s. This is off Amazon. It was like $19. But I got a lot of play value out of it. You know, it fits multiple scales. So it's really meant for like the little kind of army men size, but I use it with G.I. Joe and all that kind of stuff. So I figured, you know, I'd customize this up a little bit and that'd be a cool birthday present. I have a lot of stuff in front of you, as you can see, and most of it I've never used. You've seen me use these chrome pens before and I love these things. I don't know if it's pronounced Molotow or Molotov or however, it's German, so I don't know if they pronounce it differently, but it's written Molotow. You've seen me use this gold pen in the G.I. Joe video that came out recently. I figured I'd give it a use on this. But then I have all this kind of like foliage stuff that's used for like train models or train displays, things like that. I've never used any of that stuff before, so it's going to be a learning experience. I'm just going to kind of test it out. The plan currently that I have is I thought it'd be cool to take the gold and the silver and kind of put it in that cave back there, like, you know, there's gold or silver in the cave or whatever, and put some moss and trees and stuff around, you know, different platforms and the like. I have a sanding block at 60 grit and some sandpaper here, which I think is 150 grit, I think. So I'm going to use the sanding block to kind of rough up the surface so there's somewhere for the paint to kind of adhere to. And then I'm going to give it a wash in black and brown to kind of, you know, get some of these kind of craggly details out and all that. And then the glue there's just to kind of help with the moss stick. I've seen this technique a couple times online about mixing paint, glue, and the moss together to kind of paint it on, so I'm going to try that out. This is, you know, fully experimental, so don't come to me to try and learn anything. Watch me succeed or watch me fail, whichever. I'm going to get most of this out of the way, and I'm going to start sanding, and then we'll come back and, you know, we'll just start doing stuff to it. Alright, I did my sanding off camera, and this is the label off the back of it, so you can see Tim E Toys Battle Mountain. So I guess that's its official name. I always just called it a cave when I was a kid because, you know, big ass cave. I guess what I'll do first is kind of the easy stuff, which is like the wash and kind of the painting, and then we'll add the moss and everything later. Should be fun, I guess. Alright, so we're going to use the gold and the silver to kind of put some gold and silver here in the cave, make it look like, I don't know, I guess a gold and silver mine maybe. I don't know anything about like geology or anything like that, so I don't know if those two metals ever occurred together on Earth, but you know, it's a toy, so we'll have some fun with it. Alright, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some grooves that I like and just kind of put some silver in there. You know, it's not going to look perfect, but I think it'll get the point across at least. There, that looks pretty cool, I think. We'll add some deposits down here at the bottom. Alright, and now I'll switch to gold. And then the idea is to kind of cover a lot of this with black and hope that it kind of shines through a little bit. But we'll see, I suppose. May see these again later, but I think we're done with these. And now I guess we'll do our wash, which I think I'm going to do a black first and then do brown over it. So that way I can really get kind of the, you know, get these lines really defined in black and then kind of go over with maybe a dry brush in brown, kind of, you know, make some dirt a little bit. I think that'll be fun. Alright, I got my brush, got my bowl, got my paint. So now I'm going to do the black wash and all this and try and bring out these grooves and creases and maybe any detail that the sanding might have brought out to the surface. I'll probably cut out big chunks of this just because you've seen me do washes, you know, 100 times before. Well, it's more like 5, 6 times, but, you know, you don't have to watch me do a wash. We got plenty of videos on that, just kind of giving you a little extra, I suppose. One thing I will mention is that I don't have a container big enough for this to sit on, so I've got my cutting board under it with some aluminum foil and try and catch any water that might run off of it. Again, since these grooves are vertical, you really want to try and go over, or you want to try and go with the grooves to get the paint down in there, because going across, you see it kind of just leaves spaces, so you want to go with the grooves to try and get the paint in there. My mixture here is mostly paint to water ratio, like it's not very thin, so I'm hoping that it'll really set in there. And ideally what I'd like to do is get kind of the shadows or like under these undersides of these peaks or whatever to stay black ideally. So wash is done now. I know there's kind of a big chunk missing, but I figured you didn't want to watch me do this for an hour. I think it turned out pretty good. You know, we got, you know, black lines everywhere, kind of weathered up this mountain a little bit. and covered up the silver and gold just enough to where it'll shine if it catches the light. So I think that looks pretty spectacular. I might go back in and give it a little more oomph and kind of add a few spots here and there, but I think we're done with the wash. That leaves us with doing some brown and then doing the moss. I'll probably start the brown and then cut that out, because really the point of this video is the moss, because I'm going to try that for the first time, and you've seen me do dry brushing and washing already, but we'll get started anyway. So I accidentally started doing my dry brushing without hitting record, so that's embarrassing. But you've seen me do dry brush 100 times. I'm not doing a very good job of doing my dry brush right now. I'm kind of keeping all the excess on the brush. The idea was to keep the caves really dark. You know, there's one up here that you can't see, and then leave anything that had an underside, like here and here and here, leave those dark because of shading. But kind of what I'm doing now is I'm going across all the flat surfaces in brown to kind of bring some earth to it. So far so good. I mean, it doesn't look perfect, but you know, so far so good. And then I think what we'll do is, since again you've seen me do dry brush and all this before, we're just going to skip to the moss, which is the kind of the point of this video. Alright, so that's the end of the dry brush, which it doesn't look perfect. It's kind of splotchy in certain areas, but I think, you know, it looks good to me anyway. It looks finished, I guess. So I'm going to clean up this area a little bit. We'll start doing things with the moss and little trees and stuff, and see if we can a little bit more kind of life to this. For the moss, I've seen this technique done a couple of times. You kind of add glue, paint, and the moss all into one, and then use a brush to kind of paint the moss on. So this is the first time I'm ever trying it, but I've seen a couple people do this before, and I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm using this moss, just using some Elmer's, you know, glue wall, a PVA glue, or whatever it's called, and then I'm just going to kind of mix this paint in. Let's give it a shot. So it kind of comes out in clumps, and that's probably plenty. I don't think I'll need much more than that. I'm not sure what the ratio mixture is on this or anything like that, but I'm gonna kind of break all this apart. Maybe a little easier to work with. Like I said, I don't know what the ratio mix is supposed to be, so I guess we'll find out real soon. So add this paint in here, and we'll add in this glue. I'm gonna make sure I have enough glue. And I know I said I retired it, but Old Faithful's back for one last huzzah, and I can tell already I'm going to need a lot more paint and a lot more glue. So let's go ahead and add that in, because it's not kind of saturated enough. There we go. It's a lot more paint and a crap ton of glue. I might add a little bit of black, because this paint's kind of turning the moss a bright green, but kind of works actually, because I didn't want it all to be one uniform green color. So yeah, this might end up working pretty well, I think. So let's just see what happens. We'll paint some on here. Nope. That didn't work. You know what? I might have to do it just by hand and kind of just put it on there. Yeah, I think by hand's going to be the best method. Wasn't what I had in mind, but kind of what I got to do, it looks like. Sticking it in spots where I think moss might grow. The trick is trying to get it on there without kind of having it stick to my fingers instead. I might have to add a little bit more glue, because so there are some dry spots in here. I'm hoping that this glue will be sufficient and I won't have to use super glue or anything like that, because that would be a whole different ball game, especially in terms of application. Let's try this again. It's kind of sticking to my fingers a little bit, which hopefully means it'll stick to the plastic. Ideally, and where I've seen before, is that it sticks to the brush and then you brush it on without having to use your fingers, but you know, we learn. But I like it so far. I probably won't even end up using all the moss that's in this bowl. Just kind of eyeball it and put moss where I want it to go. There's no like definitive this is where moss will go kind of deal. Because as far as I know, moss will grow anywhere where there's sunlight and water. I don't even think there's dirt needed for moss. I don't think. But you know what? I'm not an herbologist or whatever the term would be for someone who studies, you know, moss and fungus and the like. So I could be wrong on that. Probably put a couple more pinches of moss here and there, and then we will move on to something else, which I'm just going to use the moss straight as it is and some glue. I like how bright the moss is, but I also want to use some of the darker moss to kind of add some little extra colors. Maybe this will work, maybe it won't. We'll find out. Let's add a little bit of glue up at the top, and I'll take just some regular dry moss and kind of push it down. Now I'm hoping that enough moss is kind of sticking and stuck together so that way the loose bits, when they fall off, you don't see all the extra glue hiding out underneath of there, you know what I mean? But if this doesn't work, then I'll just switch to super glue, which I know that'll hold pretty much anything. And let's put a little down here, kind of, break it apart and let it fall on the glue so it looks a little bit more organic. But I'm sure there's someone in the comments right now telling me that I'm messing this up, there's an easier way to do it, which if there is, please tell me. That way, if I decide to do it in the future, I'm already ahead of the power curve. I probably should have gotten clear glue, but I didn't see any at Hobby Lobby, which I understand. I could have gone anywhere and gotten glue, and probably a lot cheaper, but convenience, you know what I mean? You know what, I think this little peak right here needs a little something something. If I were smarter or more creative, I would figure out a way to make what do they call it, Spanish moss, the one that kind of hangs. I think that'd look really cool. I'll leave that to the people who are more creative than myself. Alright, I think that's enough with the moss for now. I'm going to go ahead and pitch this because this didn't really work for me. Might work for you. You know, maybe I missed a step. Maybe there was something I was supposed to add and I didn't, and you kind of know what it is. Hopefully you've already typed in the comments what it is that I missed. Because it's all about sharing knowledge at this stage. Like, if you saw something that I missed and I should have done, put it in the comments. That way people watching, if they want to try it, they can see, hey, you forgot to add, I don't know, super glue, or you forgot to add some kind of epoxy or something. That way, they won't mess it up. Okay, so the glue's mostly dry, and the moss stays put. I mean, it'll move like if you kind of force it to, but it's not budging off of that, just holding it. I'm probably going to go through and super glue it anyway because I am going to be shipping this to my friend. So I'm probably going to go through and kind of put super glue around it, which is what I would recommend, because if you're going to ship this in any kind of way, it's good to just super glue it down, because Elmer's I don't think is going to hold up in shipping. So now we're on to these two items. I'm not sure if I'm going to use both of them or not, but I am going to be using super glue to hold this stuff down, and this is probably all I'll use, is this little amount. I might not even use all of this, but I kind of like it. It hangs together a little bit, so I could probably make, Spanish moss out of it, maybe. So that's kind of cool. And for the super glue, I'm just using Loctite super glue. I like this gel stuff, so I don't know if this one's any good. This is just the one I had lying around, but I guess we'll find out. Mine's a little clogged, and then I just hold it and wait for it to dry. At least dry enough to, hold this stuff. So this stuff you can, pull off little pieces and parts. Not really sure what this stuff is in the wild necessarily, but I like the way that it looks. I think it just brings some more colors to the color palette. And then these will be the last two that I use. So I'll put a bunch up here, which is out of camera view for you, I understand, but don't worry, I'll show you at the end where it went. Yeah, we'll put this other remainder up here at the top. I think that'll work. Now time for this, which I'm mostly just going to add it to, little corners where the moss is already. I think that'll work pretty well for what I needed to do. It kind of falls apart pretty easily, so kind of apply it to the bottom of this and then stick it where I want it. I think that might work better for me in the long run. Maybe put some on the back so it has something to grab onto. Just, I guess, hold it until it dries. Well, dries, at least enough to hold it by itself. And I think I'll do one more, and we will call it a day. I think that looks pretty spectacular. I mean, just for kind of winging it and not really knowing what I'm doing. I'll wait for that to dry and make sure it all set, and we'll be done. And there it is, folks. That's about as much as I'm going to do to it. I could put more moss and whatever this stuff's called on it, but I wanted to leave enough area that it could still be played with, you know what I mean? Everything on here is glued in one fashion or another. It's all kind of staying put, which is good. So if you just kind of made that and then put your figures on it, it'll hold. But again, I'm going to go through, kind of super glue things down, because it is going to be shipped and all this is going to fall off if it, gets jostled around in shipping. I'm pretty pleased with it. I hope, the recipient enjoys it. Again, this was like 19 bucks on Amazon. The moss and stuff was a little expensive, but I think it's a kind of a big improvement. You can see it's not really meant for kind of 3 3/4 figures, but like little mega constructs will work just fine. So if you have any kind of ideas or constructive criticism or better ways to get this moss to kind of adhere, or, a better method, let me know down below. I'm always eager to learn new things. This was just kind of an experiment, like the title said. If you enjoyed it or you like this kind of content, then I ask you to please like, comment, share, and subscribe. So I do like making these videos, and normally it's just toy reviews, but anyway, that's all I got today. So until next time, thanks for stopping by. I'm Salty, signing off.